It's not getting in.
Welcome everybody out there in podcastland. The Good Times with Good People company proudly presents the Loft Party podcast, where it is always about good times, good people, and good talk. Good. Now that you've received your invitation, join us. Grab a cocktail, light a cigar, or whatever you like to smoke. Tell a friend, and welcome to the party. And I'm your host and moderator, Rio, and let's introduce today's panel. Of course, we have our returning champion, Chris O'Connor. Do we want to say...
Sure.
He is no longer,
as
of tomorrow, a co-owner of Liquid 9 Broadcast Media, but you do have holdings still.
Yeah, I'll still be involved in the investment business and the TV business, but just not the
advertising. All right. We have Brian Massey, our resident Brian Mass. He's the market analyst for True Media. Joining us again, Mark Kulik. He is with Vesta Realty Partners. He is the managing partner. And of course, the anonymous female, because she doesn't want you to know her name. And today's show, episode 47, Shut Up and Take the W. And it hit me one day. I was watching the Trump show, and it hit me that why isn't he just taking the win? Just take the win and be happy. I don't understand why he's arguing what he's already won. At this point, just you won. There are going to be people who are going to argue with you, but you already have the job. You don't have to argue back. You just do the job. And the thing that got me thinking that was actually not the first thing on our list, but it's definitely on the list, and that is when he did the rally a couple weeks ago, and it was like a full campaign style rally, saying that he was running for 2020. When you literally just got this job.
But that's exactly what it was, and he said that.
Yeah,
that was the kickoff of his 2020 campaign.
I'm like, which is so ridiculous. Just shut up and take the W. I don't understand.
I feel like it's like shut up and actually do your job at this point.
That I think is implied in the take the W. But before we jump into it, I want to do as we always do, our RIPs. First, actor Bill Paxton. He, of course, was in several things. Some of which, of course, Aliens. One of the Predator movies, True Lies, Apollo 13, and probably most notably Twister. That a lot of people remember him from. On top of television shows like Big Love that we were actually just talking about before we started the show. And RIP to Judge Joseph Wapner, ding, 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 the People's Court. He passed away at 97, so he was a ripe old age, and I'm sure not broke to boot.
I still wonder what happened to Rusty the Bailiff.
I forgot about him.
I love that show.
Forgot about Rusty the Bailiff. That is funny. But before we get started with more Trump talk, I want to start with a couple things. One, and the Oscar goes to. Well,
did you see that last night?
Oh yeah.
So
not La La Land.
So not La La Land, exactly. So. We're sitting there, we're watching the show. It's actually a pretty decent show. We were both thinking, actually Kimmel's doing a pretty good job. I can see him getting asked back to do this a few times. I think he may be on track to pull a Billy Crystal because I really did think his sense of humor was right for the show. And we get to the very end, and somebody's getting fired. So somebody handed a card that should have been discarded to let's just be real, to old people. who didn't quite know how to handle the fact that they knew they had the wrong card when they were on the stage. Because in my thought, and maybe everybody else could chime in, you look down, you open the card, you look down at the card, you go, I know this is live TV, ladies and gentlemen, but excuse me, I think you guys gave me the wrong card. You know, like, of course, people in the audience would have, but not to the point of you announcing a winner. They come up to start their acceptance speech, and then somebody runs out from backstage with the actual card. and you have to...
This is why you don't brag, because like a couple days before, the PricewaterhouseCoopers guy was like, we always do a great job, and we have such a good relationship with the Academy, and blah, 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 and then you totally
I'll tell you what
jack
it does
it up.
give me a little faith in, though. And I've always felt horrendously bad for her for years, but people always said that Marissa Tomei never actually won her Academy Award, that they read the wrong name, and she got an Oscar just by complete bullshit because they read the wrong name. And this gives me a little bit of faith that no, they actually would have amended and fixed the problem pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so I do like that aspect of it because I really like Marissa Tomei and think she's great, but it was from my cousin Vinny, for God's sake.
I know.
So it does make you wonder a little bit what they were thinking.
That was a fantastic movie. I
love the movie, but I mean, Academy Award.
Academy
Let
Award.
us tell you how far we've come in the Oscar arena of awards.
All kidding aside, she was exceptional in that role.
She was great.
Absolutely.
She did a very good job with it.
Yeah, it's just such an unlikely movie for anybody to get an Oscar for.
I mean, are you beating Jessica Tandy and Meryl Streep for my cousin Vinny? I mean, I don't really know, but I did love the movie.
Oh man, that and Anonymous Female was saying, you know, you feel bad for La La Land because they came up to accept an award and realized they had to give it away. But you kind of feel worse for the cast of Moonlight because, you know, they can't fully enjoy this moment because it's getting snatched out of the hands of somebody else.
They still can't. And they were talking about that this morning on Good Morning America. You know, Robin Roberts was like, I feel horrible for them because we're still talking about the incident and not that they won. And it was a huge milestone. It was the first LGBT movie ever.
Well, now, this is what's funny. So it's the first movie about anything to do with LGBT that has won for Best Picture. I may be the first one to win an Oscar, I'm not sure.
They said that this morning it was.
But I think the other significant thing is I can't remember, and maybe our table historian can, I can't remember a black movie winning Best Picture. Ever.
Sure. Didn't the one with Sidney Poitier win Best Picture?
Well, there's been people with black actors.
He was the main actor. This cast was
this is almost
exclusively
black. This is almost an exclusively
like a Spike Lee type of film.
Moonlight is an almost exclusively black cast.
Sure.
And it was
not that it was a black film, but it just the fact that it was an almost exclusively black cast gave me a little like, oh wow, I don't think I've ever seen this before.
Has Spike Lee ever won a Best Picture award?
No.
I don't think he has.
I don't even think he's been nominated.
Oh, he's been nominated.
Has he been nominated? Okay.
And he's been nominated for various things, but I don't remember what they all are. But I thought maybe a couple.
I think he was nominated. I think he was nominated for
Do the Right
Malcolm
Thing.
X.
I think
it might have been Do the Right Thing.
Oscar nominations. I thought as well.
You had a look on your face when I said it was the first LGBT. There have been movies about gay rights and gay men,
absolutely,
but not LGBT.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's what was giving me pause for
Yeah.
thought. I mean, I think yes, it's a great accomplishment. It's one more nice step in the world. I don't know why. Like, here's my problem. Like, without having seen the movie, so I'll make that full disclaimer in advance. I sometimes feel like cause movies win because of the cause, not because of the filmmaking and the film itself. And so I haven't seen it, so I'm not saying that's the case here. I am saying that there are movies who were under-deserving to win, but won because they were cause movies. And I will throw out Schindler's List as a classic example of one that was not a great film, not particularly well made, but dealt with such a cause that needed to be dealt with. But I don't think it was nearly the best movie that I've ever seen about the Holocaust and the struggle that Jewish people had during World War II. I just think Steven Spielberg did it. It was a big blockbuster, but it wasn't. I did not think it was his best storytelling, nor did I think it was his best filmmaking, to be perfectly honest.
But you have to think about.
Wait, hold on. I need to jump in here real quick because we actually have a Jewish person at the table. Oh, what do you think about it?
So actually, also coming from somebody who went to the movies almost every week this past year, Chris, I hear what you're saying on the cause movies, but Moonlight was not a cause movie.
And I was just going to say, I didn't think it was.
I made the disclaimer that I have not seen.
I hear you on that. So just to say it from somebody who would call it that, if I felt like it was, Moonlight was an exceptional movie. It was an exceptional movie that was very, very well done, and I think a very moving depiction of and I would like to focus on it less on his sexuality, less on all of those other factors, but just the development of a young man and how
it's a coming of age story.
It was just fascinating. That doesn't take away from the fact that I loved La La Land, loved that movie. It was great, but just to say, I think there were several movies that could have deserved Best Picture this year, and I'm happy that Moonlight won. To your point about cause movies, though, I 100% agree. Schindler's List is not the most moving depiction of the Holocaust. It's not the best directed film that you've ever seen. But it kind of hit the right place, the right time.
I thought it was
the
an
right
important
subject
movie,
matter.
not the best movie.
Yeah,
important,
but that's what I was going to say. You have to think about what else came out that year. Not was it the best, that type of movie ever. I mean, it's going up against what.
Sure, but I think so often, you miss so many. And one reason I am glad, a Moonlight did, and just not to play devil's advocate and flip sides all the time, but I love it when independent films win, or when smaller features win, and those kinds of things, because it makes you think that actually they're paying attention to the craft, and that's being done
and I
at the
think
time,
when
which I do
Schindler's List came out, that wasn't the case.
I think it was Steven Spielberg
has
made
evolved,
an important movie,
and it still has a long way to go. But they are evolving in the way that they choose.
Sure.
How
often was it that just because Meryl Streep was in a movie, she was nominated for an award? She never was not nominated for an award just because she put out a movie.
I know. I think they said this year was her 20th nomination.
I mean, it's just sometimes at some point it's a little bit of nonsense. I'm I get that you're a good actress. Congratulations. You're not always one of the top 5 best actresses of the year. So it gets a little silly. She's just always going to get it.
What I didn't understand was, I know we're getting off topic, but I didn't understand why Viola Davis wasn't in the Best Actress. There was no other female other
in
than
the movie.
A little girl for very short
for
scene.
like a half an hour.
And I'm how is that? Why was that a supporting actress and not a...
There are rules about this, actually, and a certain amount of it depends on screen time and your billing and those kinds of things and what you agreed to in advance. So you can be the only female in the movie but not be carrying the movie.
So since Denzel's carrying the movie.
Well, it's kind of weird though, because have you seen it?
It doesn't always have to be. No, I haven't yet. And there doesn't always have to be a lead actor and lead actress in every single movie. You can have a movie just with all dudes in it, and what are you gonna do? You show a scene of one girl in the background?
It just seemed odd because I feel like. No, I guess not. I guess there were times when he was outside by himself.
And that's a movie I'm dying to see.
It was good.
Fences was amazing.
Well, don't go in it thinking you're going to feel good when you leave it.
Yeah, that's for sure. But it was a great year for movies.
Was
Manchester by the Sea. That was just phenomenal.
Yeah,
there were millions.
Did you see it? We didn't get to see Moonlight because every time we looked to see it. They had such limited showtimes here, and they were one or two times a day, and then it was 11 o'clock at night, and then it was gone.
Then we were okay.
You knew it wasn't going to be a blockbuster, so if you're a theater chain,
Yeah.
You are going to relegate it to your smallest theater.
But that was poor choice for them because it was Moonlight.
Well, that was their.
And
I do think, because it happens a lot after the Oscars, movies that had limited releases will get wide releases, at least for a short amount of time.
Well, that's when you put out a movie on December 31st, just so you qualify for that year's Oscars. You know, then you yank it out for a little bit, and then you go into wide release afterwards. That happens all the time. We opened it in New York and LA. So
Well, look at what Avatar did. It opened like the 15th, 16th of December.
Yeah.
And then it was out for 6 months at the movies. I can't remember.
I've never seen
a
movie be at the movies that long.
Then
Star Wars.
But
recent Star Wars,
different day and different time.
But then they took it out and then they put it back in when they released it on DVD. They put it back out at the movies.
I know. I thought that was weird.
Yeah, they made a ton of money.
But they do it constantly.
It's
And
the
in fact,
highest
It's
grossing
not about
film
the
of all
message,
time.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the other thing. It's not about the message of getting some of these movies out to the theaters. It's about what's going to make the most money.
Yeah.
I have to admit though that there are some movies.
Right.
There are some movies that are just better on a big screen. They're just better.
Yeah.
You know, you
So,
just don't get
presence.
if the first time you see it is at home on your TV, you're probably not gonna understand what the big deal was.
If I'm sitting 5 feet away from my 80-inch television with my surround sound speakers and the lighting's the way I like it, and I'm eating good food that I like and enjoying
I'm
the drink,
telling you,
and there's no screaming kids and there's nobody talking and playing on their phones.
I
am
honestly
okay with
think
that, too.
Avatar was the first movie in a long time I went to that I was just like, you have to see this in the movies.
But all I heard was
The
movie night at Chris's.
Yeah.
Actually, I heard that.
I did hear
Always down for movie
that. I
night.
did hear that. I did hear movie night
he's
at
got
Chris's.
an awesome
That's
grill
why,
too.
but Chris, that's why you go to Alamo Drafthouse.
Sure.
Yeah.
You do limit those interruptions.
Yep.
And there is something to be said for the experience of going to a theater. And I actually noticed it. So I'm a huge opera fan. And
Wow. Really?
yeah, it's a weird
Cool, that's
passion.
awesome.
No.
I got the gumption. I was like, you know what? There are some things I haven't seen that I wanted to see, and especially this year, I'm going to Houston to see the third of the Ring Cycle operas, Goddammerang. So I thought, okay, I need to start at the first, and I'm going to rent it. And I've got to tell you, renting an opera and watching it at your home, and I have a nice TV with a decent sound system. Nothing can replace the actual presence of being in a theater, and it's not as powerful at the movies as it is at the opera, but there's still a little factor of
Sure.
Yeah, just the scale. Yeah.
Again, there was a point in time, and I was with you. Like, I felt like going to the theater gave me extra wow factor and all those kinds of things. And then I just really got annoyed by, I need to go and be there when you tell me I need to be there.
Yeah.
You're outpricing yourself now. It's starting to be super expensive and a little ridiculous. And you can't tell these kids to shut the hell up because there's talking over the whole damn movie, which drives me bananas. Like, I have a golden rule at home. I'm like, whoever I'm watching the movie with, I am so fair and free with your commentary. You say whatever you want. Just say, hey, can you pause real quick? Beep, I will pause. And then you can talk. Because chicks are the worst. They just want to start talking. And they will talk over
Ask you some questions
insane stuff.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
Did
Don't,
you just say
do
chicks
not
are the
ask
worst?
me
Yes.
what just happened.
Yes, I did.
What did he say? Oh my God. Are we not watching the same movie at the same time? You don't do that. No, you don't. You know,
I'm
this female
gonna-
does
I
not do
will throw out
that.
the
But trust me, I have been on dates where half the movie is me trying to answer questions about something that we're both seeing for the first time.
Yeah, no.
I'll tell you what.
What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen next? I literally do not know.
I will tell you what I'm horrible
start talking
about.
about dinner. In the middle of it.
No.
Jack the enchiladas. Like,
Are you hungry?
There are times when I've been like, Mario's like, what? And I'm like, I don't know, you were talking. Or vice versa.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I'm like, can you please rewind that? But I'm horrible about, we've seen a movie 50 times, and I'm like, did she just say blah, blah, blah? He's like, yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
That's the one thing I'm
It's like
horrible
when you're
about.
wrong on song lyrics, but you've heard the song your whole life, and you're like, the one time you decipher what they really said, you're like, damn, I've been been singing this wrong.
Well, that happens all the time. All the time.
Well,
Semi-charmed life. Now we're way in left field now.
Mario gets a kick
but
out
look
of
at
me.
the words to semi-charmed life, and you'll never think of the 90s the same.
Yeah. He gets a kick out of me.
You're good.
Doing that.
Do we get back on as we get?
Okay. We're reeling. All right, so
To switch up considerably.
yeah, to switch considerably.
Yeah.
Considerably. The anonymous female's mother asked her a question, and I think in the moment, the answer to the question was maybe a premature answer because of what my next thing on my list is. What in the hell is going on with all the Jewish center and cemetery attacks? There's always been some weird anti-Semitism thing floating around, and I recognize that it's always, but it's like here recently, and once again, since Trump got elected, I don't understand why.
Let's be fair, the Jewish community center was shot up under Obama.
Yeah, no.
So there's always been acts of anti-Semitism, which I feel are horrible. My question, and this is what I would love to know, what you think about this too, is do you feel like they're just being more reported now, or that there actually are more incidents, or is it a combination of both, and we're finally starting to focus on something that matters? It's a divide. I mean, everybody would say it's a divided country.
My response to my mom was, it's because of things, in my opinion, it was because of some things that Trump said during the campaign. And him being kind of hateful in his speech anyway gives people, it was kind of like when we talked about how racist people all of a sudden felt like they could say whatever they wanted to say about Obama when he became elected. It's kind of along that line of, well, he thinks it's okay for him to say it, so I'm going to start being open about it.
But is it not strange that we have a better relationship with Israel, strangely, under Trump than we ever do with Obama? Obama in Israel did not have a good relationship, which is a little awkward.
So Trump is, for all of Trump's fault, and we've had, I'm sure there are plenty more conversations to come about that.
Sure.
I think Trump has the capability of being for Israel, one of the better presidents in the history of the United States in their relationship with Israel since its inception. So I shudder to say. I'll let the anonymous female continue what she was going to say. I just wanted to say that I think Trump's been great to Israel, and then I'll share my thoughts.
But I don't. It's not. I'm not saying he necessarily said anything bad about Jewish people. It's the way he talks about whoever he wants to talk about. So people feel like, I don't like you, so I'm going to start talking about you.
Just what people would call minorities in general.
Right.
Opens up a floodgate.
Right.
I gotcha.
And then you've got these groups where I'm sure in certain areas they're more populated than others. And I'm like, she goes, well, they've always targeted Jewish people. Yes, but it's more so now. It's minorities as a whole.
So I was kind of talking to my mom a little bit about this too. I said, some of the frustrations, and I don't know this for a fact. I don't know the numbers behind it, but it feels though it would be a possibility with the way that Trump approaches things.
Aren't you a data guy?
Okay, real quick. Actually, let's take a sidebar then, because real quick, I just Googled. I said hate crime statistics since Trump.
But these would be reported hate crime statistics.
Right. Okay.
Right. You know that hate crime legislation is actually relatively new too. So
it is interesting.
Well, regardless of that, I didn't even get to the data.
Yeah.
The top two posts. One is from the New York Observer. Says report. It says huge spike in hate crimes since Donald Trump election. The second one's from USA Today. Says hate crime activity has declined since election.
But the Observer, is that even like a real reputable
I don't know.
news source?
But my point
what is reputable
I
at
don't
this
know that
point?
USA Today is either.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's kind of my point. Is you can't. It's hard to find out.
Well,
it's hard to find information.
I don't feel like they're being reported more because they've been. I think I know what you're saying by that. Like, kidnappings have happened as long as there have been children.
Sure.
But as media has gotten more advanced, we hear about them faster, and we know it just seems like all of a sudden it's happening all the time when it was happening all the time before.
I think that there's a very valid case to be made, and I would take rape as a classic example, which I view as one of the most horrific crimes in the world and a massive act of violence on whoever it's being perpetrated on. And for generations, it was considered taboo to even discuss it, talk about it. A lot of times women were made to feel at fault because of it. And then you started to get past and you saw an increase, what they would say an increase in the number of reported incidents. That doesn't mean that rape all of a sudden went on the increase on their eyes. It meant that it was just finally being reported and acted on, which is great.
I think back to your original question, though, I think it's both. I think it's a little of both. I think people feel more emboldened, and it's being reported more.
Yeah. Well,
here's the thing.
Before you start, let me just say this. I just pulled two things from NPR, just real quick before we start the show. One was talking about headstones at a Jewish cemetery being vandalized in Philly, and the other was there were bomb threats made to Jewish centers in 11 states. And this is all just stuff that happened this week.
That was on President's Day, wasn't it? Or it was on the same day. It happened. All of this happened on the exact same day.
So, and that's what got me like, okay, wait, what is going on? Because yes, you've always heard of something anti-Semitic, and I've always, felt the same way about it. It's horrible. It shouldn't be happening. The people who are doing this should be caught and as I say, bust upside the head.
I go a little further than that.
But it just seems like, this almost feels organized, like because it's all happening in a concentrated matter of weeks. That we're hearing this much activity, and that's what made me. Okay, but Mark.
Wasn't this month, at some point this month, was Holocaust Remembrance Day?
Yeah.
Was that the 3rd or the 10th?
It was really early in the month. You have to excuse me. Yeah, the Jewish holidays move around so much because it's based on a lunar calendar that it's hard to keep track every year on the dates.
And you have a lot of holidays.
My general feeling are a few things. First of all, coming off of last week where we discussed Emmett Till, and it was one that I wasn't familiar with. One of the things I think is that for years, these really the really awful things that have been done to all sorts of communities that differ from the norm has been horrible, and it's underreported. So I'm part of the Jewish community, and I'm aware of a lot more instances that probably people who aren't part of that community are. For instance, I went to school at Heimer Brand Hebrew Academy, which is attached to the Jewish Community Center in Overland Park. And I remember very vividly, about 2nd grade, they started having armed security guards at each entrance to the school. So when we start talking about bomb threats into schools and into the community centers, it's not as new as we'd like to think it is, because we were already responding to that in circa 1993, 94.
But it's on the rise, do you think?
I think copycat incidents are the biggest problem. I don't think it's Trump. I think it's somebody does something, and some idiot does something, and then other idiots who are watching the news say, "Oh, geez, this is what we should do," and it's something that in high school debate circles was referred to as disaster porn. People, you hit the one side of people that read the news and are horrified by these things, but you get the other side of people that are almost entranced in some sort of pornographic state into what they're seeing on the news and it gives them ideas. So I think it's actually the double-edged sword of having a media that is. I'm so happy that these things are being reported because finally this is coming to the surface more than it has, and I think it's disgusting that Mario brings up Emmett Till last week. I don't know what the hell happened, just as I think it's disgusting that people are unaware of the Jewish Community Center being shot up 3 years ago. But I don't feel any less safe in America today than I ever have before. And
did you ever feel unsafe?
Feeling unsafe, I think, is a matter of speaking. You certainly, especially because
unsafe just because of your religion.
Well, I affiliate most highly with the Chabad organization. I think it's one of the great organizations that has come into American life post World War II, and those are the rabbis that you see in the black coats with so everyone has that image.
Right.
Well, when I'm walking down the street with them, which I do quite often, we get chanted at, yelled at, occasionally things thrown. So have I ever felt unsafe? No, not necessarily. I mean, someone yelling at me doesn't make me fear for my life. But on the same page, yeah, you do feel. You turn around and you're like, what's the impetus for that? Like, why? So I don't know. I definitely, as I said, I don't feel any less safe. I think America is a great place to be Jewish. I think it's outside of Israel the best place to be Jewish in the world, and and I think it's good for people to have the conversations.
And I will admit this is slightly tongue-in-cheek, but I think people who perpetrate hate crimes should have to understand the full weight of what their crime was about. So if somebody perpetrated a hate crime against a Jewish person, I would love to show them these special showers. That would be their punishment. If somebody perpetrated a crime against an African American, I'd love to show them a tree with a rope and go, this is the history of what people have done. You are so ignorant that you don't even understand that. So I'm going to make you very aware of it really, really, really fast. And that's not to take it lightly, because those things were horrific. But when you are that stupid and that dumb, that is the kind of action that you're willing to take. I'm like, I'm eye for an eye, dude. I am okay with that.
One thing that I want to say, not to go against that, because actually there's part of me that loves that line of thinking, but one of the things that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who the Chabad organization is based on his teachings, he was the seventh and final Rebbe because he didn't have offspring, so it doesn't transfer, is his identification after the Holocaust was not to focus on the Holocaust. And one of the main reasons why was his dedication was to fight darkness with light. So for every time, and you'll see it if you notice, if you're into how the Chabad organization and its followers handle things like reports in the news like today, you'll see people lighting candles on Friday night. You'll see an increase in people putting on tefillin during the day. You'll see an increase in people making charitable donations to whatever organization they choose to make. And it's part of an idea of the best way to fight darkness is with light and not with succumbing, not with...
I'm an infinitely worse person than that. And I believe bad people are bad. And
I think
just
that's
want them
any
gone.
Spiritual...
Yeah.
I mean, the whole Gandhi thing and all that, that's great.
Yeah, and look, I fully get
Christianity, none of them, Christianity to a point. It says you're not supposed to, but...
Yeah. Well, but and I agree, but there's actually, it's a campaign. So during I believe it was during the 6-Day War was when he that really became entrenched, is he started these campaigns where they drove what they called mitzvah mobiles, and the rabbis would literally just go to find people at their places of work in the streets, put on tefillin, get them to do something positive.
But when you kicked the living crap out of Egypt in 6 days, I mean, you had the flexibility.
Yeah, but you didn't know that at the start of the war. Look, I mean, Israel is...
There was an overwhelming military presence in Israel. I mean, it's stunning. The weapons are far better than any other place in the country because they're all... I mean, our deal with Israel is pretty damn good. There was no chance that war was going to be lost. And I love the fact that it took 6 days. I mean, that makes me think it's even funnier. So now, you dumb shits, cut it out. And then if you saw, Egypt all of a sudden started to become a lot cooler right after that. I mean, they chilled out for a long time, and it wasn't until the assassination of Anwar Sadat, that things kind of took maybe a slight step backwards again. But that's one of the better countries for Israel in the region because they know they're going to get their ass handed to them if they want to start more shit again, which I appreciate. I applaud that. And I would love for more people who are thinking about perpetrating acts of violence for racial reasons only to go, you know what, I'm actually going to get my ass handed to me if I do this. So maybe I should rethink it real quick.
But we've been as in Israel, have been so fortunate. Not, I mean, look, if you think about the fact that there was an independence war in Israel because we were attacked by a conglomeration of the surrounding nations.
Sure.
Upon inception. And you think there's no way that a country that isn't even defined, that has no real military, should be able to withstand that. It's great that we have pride in our military history, but I think it would be even better if we didn't have to have pride in our military history.
I would agree, but every time something happens, I mean, go back to the first Gulf War where they were firing Scud missiles all the time.
Yeah.
And it was just because America went into Iraq at that point, and all of a sudden, all the bombs are being lobbed at Israel. Like, really? Like, this is the thing? Yeah. You just massacred a bunch of Kurds. So we went in and wanted to protect oil rights and every other reason that we went in. But all of a sudden, I always wonder, like, what did Israel do when they got involved in this? Well, besides blowing up nuclear bunkers, that was pretty smart. Yeah. But, other than that...
Besides that pesky little thing.
Yeah, that was 10 years earlier. Give them a break.
That was a decade ago.
But everybody knew where those bombs were headed had they been developed. So I do not blame them. And the pride in the military is well-deserved, and it's sad that it has to be that effective, but it is effective. For good reason.
Okay, are we ready to move on to
It is a little fun to talk about the history of it, though.
It is. Oh, it's fascinating. It's rich.
Sorry, Mario. I didn't
You're good. So we're ready to move into the meat of this meal.
Correspondence Dinner.
And now, Trump talk. Sad. First, Trump does, the night of the Oscars, hold the governor's ball that he and his wife host, but refuses to go to the Correspondents Dinner, and which is a tradition. Okay, so first of all, I know Trump has issues with the press. When people don't like you, they don't tend to say nice things about you. But I do think, as the president, it is a little bitch ass to not go to the Correspondents Dinner because these people might say bad things about me. Because they roast every president.
That's the point of the
That's
dinner.
the point of the damn dinner.
But he can't take criticism of any kind, even when it's joking.
Which is why it's a little bitch ass.
But yeah, I mean, the press asked Spicer why. He said it's a little, why would you pretend that there isn't, it's more than just this friendly, what's the word I'm looking for?
The banter and rapport back and
forth. It's definitely more than
like Obama.
It's a Comedy Central roast.
Yeah, he can give it as
most
good as he took it.
Most presidents do give as good as they get.
Well, they have great writers.
Yeah. But it's like you can't even just deal with that. I mean, like there's so many opportunities that he has to mend or start mending the way people see him. And he just keeps making the wrong decision every time.
I would agree. Yeah.
Which is why, shut up and take the W.
So I actually heard a very interesting, not defense of Trump, but explanation of Trump from a friend of mine that I was at. And this friend was actually my favorite major in college. Has not worked all that great for him in reality, but he was a philosophy major.
There's a lot of jobs out there for philosophers.
A lot of them.
Was that sarcasm?
A lot of them. I don't want to mention
like sarcasm.
Industries, but they have jobs open to them.
Yeah. They don't pay much, but they got jobs.
You know what? You're not a philosophy major to get rich. That's something, right? So he was telling me that if you read The Art of the Deal, which I have not done, and I don't plan on doing.
Actually, I have read it.
Okay. So he said if you read The Art of the Deal, one of the things that Trump says is that hyperbole is is essential to deal making. So what he'll do is if he says 70% of terror attacks are perpetrated by Muslims,
Sure,
Arabs,
sure.
whatever he says, and you respond, no, it's not more than 20%.
Right.
He's effectively won his argument because now he's saying, you said it yourself, it's 20%.
Sure.
So I think the more I thought of that, because there's only two explanations in my head. Either the guy is psychologically not right, or
Ding, ding, ding.
But I
don't think that's it.
I think look, you can say that, but it seems to me to be more calculated, and the more success that he has, it almost looks calculated. So we talk about, I know we'll talk about this more in a minute, but we talk about the rally where he effectively launches 2020. It's genius, because he's capitalizing on this movement that propelled him to election in the first place. He's not even letting them get caught up in the negativity. He's pumping them up more. He's saying, all right, let's get ready for 2020.
But he's only surrounding himself with people that already like him.
That's what he did the whole time, though.
Yes, but he's a narcissist. He has to. Every time it gets too negative for him, he goes somewhere where he knows people are going to shower him with praise.
Nobody disagrees. What he is doing, and I think if I can agree with you on this, what I think he is doing is giving just raw meat to the people who already love him and who say, you're absolutely right, the media is crazy, why they're super liberal, all of them, and why would you ever go to this, why would you even be a part of this? You're absolutely right, let's kick CNN out of the room because they're crazy liberal media. Let's just ask Rupert Murdoch owned outlets, let's let them be the only ones who ask questions. You know what I mean? It's just so idiotic. And when you get asked a question about, or are you going to build a wall or not? And you start responding with your CNN ratings and stuff like that, and you see how bad I beat Hillary and blah, blah, blah. Like, he is just getting... The Republicans, I will tell you, because I have a lot of weirdo Republicans in my family, they are just in love with this. They are having a field day with this, and they think it's great. And then finally, fresh talk, it's great.
But that's the strategy,
of what,
right?
though?
Of
what? No, nothing of substance.
But that's the strategy, right? Like that's why it looks. That's why I can't just buy the fact that this isn't intentional, because it worked. He became president. So I remember.
Well, no, I don't think that it's not intentional. I didn't see that. I don't make that mistake.
Okay.
It's pure intention, but is it I don't even think there's a real question in that. Is it the right thing to be doing?
Well, no,
absolutely not.
But let me ask you this question.
It's below the office that he now holds.
Do you really care? Do you really care? Because let's talk about what you have on the agenda here.
Yeah.
Do you actually care that much about the White House Correspondents Dinner?
I care that he acts presidential.
Yes, that's what I care about.
I believe he is demeaning the office of the president.
That's my problem.
But that's the issue. That's perfectly legitimate. But does in a vacuum, does the act of saying, I want no part of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, is that...
Yes.
Left to itself, that bothers you?
Yes.
Yeah, it actually does.
It is a tradition that has gone back many, many decades. It has been something that is reasonably sacrosanct in Washington. And the fact that, you cannot look at it in a vacuum, he has done nothing presidential at this point. And I feel like his disrespect for the office, and this is one example piled onto any number of other examples, taken as a whole, makes me absolutely despise him as a person, because I believe America is larger than the person, and I think you only have to look at Richard Nixon for that to say, okay, America is larger than the person who holds the office, and he is acting like it's not. And I'm saying, listen, in my mind, do what presidents do. Be a leader. Don't be an asshole. Be a leader. For one time in your life, stand up and do the hard thing, not the easy thing. And I agree with you, that's entirely calculated, and he is making all kinds of friends with his already existing base, but it's so unpresidential, and it's making it about him and not about the country.
About the office.
Conceptually, and I'm not defending Donald Trump here,
Yeah.
But the
Well,
concept
and let me say before you respond, let me say out there to podcast land, I am not in no way a Republican, but I have absolutely nothing against Republicans or Republican philosophies. I do think that we need both sides of our brain to be working in order to make real decisions that move society forward.
You gotta have a brain.
But you gotta have a brain to start with, or at least be using the one that you have. And there's a lot of calculated moves that bolster the Trump brand, but not the office of the presidency. And you are the president of the United States now. And that's my problem. It's not, I could care less if a Republican won the White House. My issue is particularly with the way Trump is handling the presidency.
Well, so it was actually, it's interesting for me to be here having this conversation, because I remember at the start of the Republican primary, I was at the Pendergast Club talking to some people about and Trump was in the lead, but second was Dr. Ben Carson. And we're talking about a man who has no qualifications to lead a nation. But I actually, at the time...
lead a surgical team. Yeah, great. Hey, what's going on, podcasters? Let's acknowledge the good friends of the Loft Party podcast. The majestic restaurant and Pendergast Club, carrying on Kansas City's tradition of great food and great jazz, 931 Broadway in Kansas City, Missouri. The J. Rieger Kansas City Distillery, whiskey, gin, vodka. That is, oh so good. And friend of the podcast and panelist, Lane Boland, managing to keep the podcast going. Apparently wealthy or not. Now onto our regularly scheduled program.
I actually love Ben Carson. And so I remember talking to somebody and I said, look, I'm thinking Rubio's going to win. And I said this last week, I supported Rubio. Mm-hmm. But really part of me desperately wanted Ben Carson to be the Republican nominee for the office. And I'll tell you, I really conceptually, I'm okay with an end to acting presidential. I'm really okay with an end to acting like a politician, because acting like a politician, to me, is partially what's brought us here. And so when you say he's not acting like a politician, my first thought is and I don't think Ben Carson would have been acting like a politician, but I love Ben Carson. I get it. I get now that the reality, when we're not talking conceptually, I get that the reality of what Trump's doing. My problem with it is it's more divisive than it's just divisive.
Right.
And
right.
It doesn't. When you're on two opposite sides of a body of water, the only way you meet in the middle is if you build a bridge.
Exactly.
And he ain't doing that.
Well, the only problem is that he doesn't have to build the bridge. And I would, even in recent history, if you want an example of somebody who was equally, if not more vilified than Trump has been, most people thought that Bush Jr. stole that election. They can argue that right, wrong, or indifferent. I happen to
with a pistol. He stole that joint.
Okay,
he stole that. We're just gonna say that.
Maybe or maybe not. Who knows? But I would say that they did follow all the Supreme Court arguments. They did the right things. They followed the process, and it never got outside of what I believe to be the institution of how this country runs. And he was possibly one of the most hated people of all time.
He was.
And yet he didn't back off from acting like the president and being presidential. You may not have liked his decisions, and there were several that I did not like, but I never thought he was unpresidential. And I think this is why now you see him kind of being getting a little more credit than he has.
Right.
Because strangely, when he was at the Trump inauguration, I mean, he and Clinton somehow managed to be friends. He and Michelle Obama are friends. I think there is a weight of the presidency that you have to understand the gravitas for, and it's bigger than you. And I don't think Trump thinks it's not bigger than him. He thinks it's about him. Well, and I think Bush had at least the sense that I'm holding an office and I have a responsibility.
I think that Trump is actually fighting. I think that in his head he watched what happened to Bush, because I said last week, and I'll say it again because I'm very proud of this, I love George W. Bush. I think that he had a lot going for him. I don't think that all of his policies were correct, but I think that he actually was a president who tried to make legitimate change.
I thought he was trying to do the right thing, even though I think
he
the
had
decisions.
bad people around him.
No, I thought he had excellent people around him. And I think he tried to
Cheney
surround.
was his problem.
Yeah.
No, actually, if you want to go back to the first Gulf War, Cheney was a phenomenal Secretary of Defense, did a really good job. Rumsfeld was a very good person at the time. It's that we got into a weird situation. Colin Powell, nobody could accuse Colin Powell of being a bad person. I don't think Condoleezza Rice, anybody could was a bad
Love
person.
Condoleezza Rice.
So I think he's surrounded himself with the best people who shared a similar political ideology. That's one thing. What I disagree with Trump is that I think he's surrounded himself with people who just like him.
Exactly.
And that I think is different.
So I think Trump. I've been reading people on social media all week, and especially today with Bush's comments yesterday, saying, I never hated him. I never thought he was out for the worst of America. I just didn't like his policies, but I could respect him.
Right.
It's crap. Okay? Let's remember the Bushisms.
Sure.
People compared him to a buffoon constantly.
Oh, he was an imbecile. Let's not say he was not he may have been a Rhodes Scholar, but he was not a Rhodes Scholar.
The level of
he was a C minus. He was a C minus.
The level of there were quotes of his that were not taken out of context. They were just horrible.
Yeah.
One of my favorites was "Families is
right.
where wings take dreams and fly."
Yeah.
I love that just because I have no idea what he's saying, but. There were also times that he was taken vastly out of context, and if you placed it back into the context of a speech, it actually made sense. And I think what Trump is doing is saying, "I saw what you guys did to Bush, and I saw how as he's saying today, he took it, and he did.
Yeah,
he acted presidential, and Trump is overtly rejecting that, saying, "I saw what you did to Bush, and I'm not going to let you do it to me." And You say these things about me, and I'm going to shove it right back at you.
It's an interesting notion.
And that in and of itself is unpresidential.
The president has to be more thick.
That's just immature.
Yeah, I'm like,
Chris, yelling at somebody or retaliating for something that one of his employees said to him.
Well, the way I think of the presidency is. Presidency is kind of like the father of a nation. So, if your kid says, you know what, Dad, you never listen to me, you're stupid, I hate you. And you say, as the father, you know what, I hate you too, you little shit. You're an asshole.
Yeah.
You are.
Your kid's just being a kid.
Your kid's just being a kid. You're the parent. You have to act like the adult in the room. And Trump's just not acting like the adult in the room. And that's my problem with how he's handling it.
I understand.
Anyway, so he's going to have his first joint address of Congress and Senate tomorrow. What are we expecting of the address?
So Spicer said when they asked him what he was, what can we expect from Trump?
Right.
Oh, he's going to outline what he wants to do, but not in detail. So basically nothing that he hasn't already said.
So it's going to be another Trump
Don't
rally
expect
speech.
him to, yes, exactly.
I'm like,
he's going to stand up there and bash the people that don't like him and how horrible the Democrats are, and I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Which he actually did at the governor's ball. I'm like, he said something to the effect of, I don't want to say anything bad about the about the other guys, but so I'm not talking to you Democrats, but I'm talking to you Republicans. The Democrats are stupid.
That was a CPAC.
And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean about you don't sink to your kid's level because you're the adult in the room, and he's not being
the best way to say that is Dr. Ben Carson would never say that.
He would, you know what? And there's under no circumstance can I wrap my brain around Ben Carson being the president of the United States.
I can't even wrap
but he wouldn't do that.
He wouldn't do that.
He may do some rambling story about how he hit somebody upside the head with a hammer, but he wouldn't chastise the kid for being a kid. That's different. And that's been my real problem.
Would you rather have Ben Carson as president right now?
No. Actually,
No,
actually, I would. As a matter of fact, what I called the entirety of the Republicans that ran, because at the time, I'm trying to remember how many of them was it?
16, I think.
Or 16?
16?
Yeah,
Something
I
like
think
that.
I was just like,
crew.
so no. What I called it was a parade of fuckery. It's just what the hell was like. Everybody was worse than the next guy or woman for that matter. Oh, stop it!
Marco Rubio.
I think Marco
You
Rubio
can't
was
just
a legitimate.
Legitimately, you would rather see Marco Rubio as president right now?
Possibly.
He's a
Actually,
legitimate
out of all of those people on the Republican side of the ticket,
Yeah.
probably Rubio I could have lived with. I didn't agree
Do you remember
with
the first
his
time
politics.
I saw Rubio?
Yeah, when he leaned
drink
off
the water.
camera to drink the water.
He was on camera.
Yeah, I was just like, what is wrong with you, dude? But he was trying to be. He was trying to be professional. He was trying to be presidential at the moment when he was running, and I could at least see that maybe he'd be in the office doing what I think a president should do.
Well, wasn't that the response to the State of the Union? He got to deliver the response.
Yeah,
He
had to deliver
had
a
the
response,
Republicans'
Which is very,
response.
very, very hard to do. You're in
Yeah.
a room by yourself. You don't get any of the same stuff. I guess.
Yeah.
So, let me ask you this, just as a general question: are there any African American Republicans that you would ever consider voting for?
I'm trying to remember the one guy who used to run the DNC. Run the RNC.
Are you
I'm
thinking
Well,
of,
didn't you say Colin Powell
okay.
too at one point?
Yeah. I can see. I can
Could you
see.
see Condoleezza
Richard
Rice?
I can see.
Steele.
I can see Condi. I can see Steele.
Yeah.
And I can see Colin Powell.
Could you ever actually cast a vote for them, or would their politics just not ever align?
No. Actually, if Colin Powell ran, depending upon who the Democrats put up against him,
Sure.
I could see actually voting for him. I thought that yes, he is a conservative in what I consider the truest sense of what a conservative is, and he's not batshit crazy. He's not part of the which is completely hijacked the Republican Party. He's not a part of the evangelical right. He's just a fiscal conservative that wants to make sure that our military is strong and we balance our budget. Okay, I'm cool with that.
get behind that?
I'm perfectly okay with that. That's why I say I'm not mad at Republicans or Republican ideology. My problem is that in the past decade-ish, the Republican Party has been truly hijacked by a parade of fuckery that I cannot get behind. Really.
But I have a strange question. So just to follow up on that, what I do find slightly encouraging and slightly frustrating all at the same time is, and I could be off base on this. This is just my general sense.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of white people who would vote for an African American regardless, and I know a lot of people who voted for Obama just because who switched parties to vote for Obama because they want to see an African American president.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know very many African Americans who would vote for an African American Republican regardless.
Well,
It would have been interesting. If
I
Obama had been a
I think it
Democrat
had been
or a
one
Republican,
of those
would have
three.
won.
You may have actually seen a split in the African American vote.
You honestly?
I would love to see.
I do. I
would
honestly
love to
think
see
so.
Condoleezza Rice run.
For example, so I was in Chicago for the weekend, and I was helping my mom do some things. And of course, after I got worn down to a nub, I went and hung out with a couple of friends, a couple different nights. And on the second night, I was hanging out with a friend. She broke her ankle, and so we were sitting there, it was me, her, and her mom. We were sitting there, and we were talking. And she asked me, what would I say to a African American that voted for Trump? And I said, well, my short answer is why, and And then she goes, well, what if I told you I voted for Trump? And I was like, okay, same answer applies. Why? And she says, so do you have a problem with Republicans? I said, no. Trump is my problem. Republicans is not my problem. Said if you have a legitimate reason for why you're voting the other side of the ticket, I can deal with that. I can deal with that all day because that means you're making an educated decision for you, and you're not just following what most black people do, and that's okay. I'm all right with that. But if the reason that you're voting for Trump is because some crazy crap that Trump said, then I'm like, yo, why?
Here's something that I have a hard time understanding, and I think is a little disingenuous of the Democratic Party. If you ever go back through time and actually study the way the Democratic Party has treated African Americans, it's been horrendous. In fact, most of the time, it was the Republicans who were far more in favor of trying to support equal rights.
Which is actually her reasoning for being a Republican.
There's a very, very, very famous quote of LBJ going, you know what, let's just pass this shit so these N-word people will vote for us for the next 200 years.
Yeah.
And that was a direct quote. It wasn't some ideological thing. It was nothing. It was just a strange bit of legal pandering.
Yeah.
When Republicans had already passed laws that got into place most of the amendments that helped protect African Americans as a protected class and made sure equal rights, in theory, legally, should have been enforced. Most of the Jim Crow laws came from Democratic candidates. All these things over time happened, and yet the amount of African Americans that I know that would ever vote Republican are
Jews don't vote Republican hardly at all either, and I don't want to start a fire here, but I do want to point out that the Democratic Party is promoting Keith Ellison through the ranks. And this is
first of all, have you told any of your other Jewish friends that you're doing this podcast?
Well, I actually just shared it on Facebook, so
okay.
I'm assuming it's now common knowledge.
Well, okay, so I didn't want to put you on blast that you may have voted Republican.
Oh, everyone knows. I'm not shy.
Okay, so because what you're saying is very true. I do think that generally African Americans don't vote Republican, and generally Jewish people don't vote Republican. But do I think that there will ever be a Republican candidate that I could take seriously? Yeah, I could take. Yes, but they would definitely. I would have to know that there's an adult in the room.
The party needs to get it together and stop art. As I said, I think I said this last week. If I didn't, I need to say it now. The party needs to stop pandering to the religious side of the party. Get back to conservative principles, and get back to trying to effectuate policy that decreases the size of government and I would say limits taxes, because those are things that I believe in, that I believe would be good for all Americans. But definitely know that there's opposition to that.
What I find that they do that is bizarre, and this is why it's very hard for me to be. And I guess this is why I always vote split ticket. I never want anybody to ever win. But the thing that's hard for me is when you just the disproportionate amount of particular ethnic groups or whatever the case is vote overwhelmingly in favor makes me think that all the issues aren't being considered. That is very odd to me. And what I would also say is that I think that there's a lack, and again, just a lack of just historical knowledge of things where I'm like, listen, are you really in favor of this person, or are you just voting along party lines? And again, it's odd to me because the Republicans, with their religious stance, you would think that would play exceptionally well in the African American community because there's a strong history of religion. It should play exceptionally well in the Hispanic community. Huge. And I get that they always tout Christian values, so I wouldn't necessarily expect the Jewish bloc to vote for them en masse, but I would expect a lot of African Americans and a lot of Hispanics to go, okay, these religious kind of things play well with me, just because of the history and how ingrained religion is in those communities.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Well,
but then
I
they
do
do
know.
stupid stuff by going, we're very religious and we have all these shared values, and then I also want to send you back to a different side of a wall or whatever, and keep you from voting and doing any number of things.
Well,
like,
and I think
this is
that's
so
Well, and
stupid.
I talked to
It just makes them dumb.
a friend of Mario's over the weekend, and her family is pretty much Democrat, and she has one sibling that voted Republican, and the only reason was because of firearms. Period.
Really?
Yes.
I look out, particularly Hispanic is the largest voting bloc coming up, fastest growing for sure. Hyper Catholic. Very religion is an enormous part. I always feel like you're born Jewish, you're born Catholic, or other than that, you get to pick. You know what I mean? So it's your choice.
I think
but no matter where it's from, I would always say I'm Catholic.
I think the reason that Republicans lose some of those groups, because I've often thought that would ideally be the way to vote if you were a minority.
Sure.
But I think the reason that they lose them is because inexplicably they fight growth for minorities in ways that will shock you if you're a true conservative, if you're a true Republican, and you sit there and you say, I strongly believe what I believe, but I really don't want to associate myself with what you believe.
Right.
And it puts us in a really hard position that I either have to side with the crazy people on the alt-right or go against principles.
Sure.
And that this election was case in point on that.
Didn't you see the picture of the Republican interns, the incoming interns, and the Democratic incoming interns?
I saw
They
a picture
were
that was
literally-
labeled that.
No,
that's what it was.
No, it was. It was.
Because
It wasn't
Ryan,
labeled that.
No,
It
Ryan was standing in front of all
Yeah,
of the
it-
Republican
It was
interns.
Paul Ryan that took the picture.
Well, they always take the picture in your class, right?
I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but it was like one black person and the rest of them were white on the
It
Republican
was
side, and it was a completely
A
mixed
cornucopia
space.
of people.
But is that
And
not a failure of the Democratic
I saw
Party at
the
local state
picture.
level?
What?
Does that not feel like a failure of the Democratic Party at the local and state level, to be perfectly honest? I mean, the Democrats have exceptionally poor local and statewide representation. And they have let their local organizations go tremendously to focus on national politics.
But
And it is now reaping just all the bad things that they should have been thinking about for a very long time.
I will also tell you, I find it very difficult to believe. I don't know. I saw the picture. And to be quite honest with you, my first thought was Photoshop does wonderful things. Do I actually believe? I just
But
had
it
trouble
was on
believing.
Paul Ryan's Twitter or Facebook or whatever. I mean, it wasn't. It was
I didn't see
him
it on-
posting it.
I
Yeah,
didn't see
it
it.
wasn't.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
posted
it was
it, right.
him
I didn't see that.
posting
So that
it.
if that's true,
And it was him. Hey, he was taking a selfie.
Yeah, right. Here's
groupie.
me with the new incoming
Yeah,
Republican
welcoming
interns.
Well, then I think honestly that whoever does his media coordination just needs to be fired immediately, because whoever said this is okay, because even if
It's not really.
It
It's
was
not
stupid.
really his choice though. Like they take pictures of the incoming interns, and he can't help
but
that they're all white.
but I cannot believe that
Republicans cleaned house, and then
some of the brightest stars in the Republican Party are not white. I mean,
I would agree, but you're still talking at a local and state level where that's
I guess.
primarily the issue, and I think you're going to see it escalate even more in the next election cycle, which is coming up in 18 months, because it's primarily Democratic seats that are up for grabs. They go in cycles. Obviously, the House is always up for grabs, but in terms of the senators that are up for grabs, that is primarily Democratic, and you're going to see unless Trump does something incredibly stupid, where that makes everybody hate Republicans, which would be the only hope that the Democrats have, it is going to be an even worse situation coming up.
Yeah. So, a couple things that I had on the list from last week that we actually didn't get to. I just want to get to real quick because they're smaller stories. One, during the 2020 campaign rally, which is just ridiculous. He says that he mentioned that Sweden was having all of these massive immigration issues, and they're letting all these bad dudes in that that are doing all these horrible things. And the response from Sweden was swift and official, in a resounding, "Excuse me, America, what the fuck? Like we're not having any of these problems. What are you talking about? What is wrong? What is your leader's side? What is he talking about?" And which of course got me back to the just shut up and take the win. Like, I don't understand.
Let me ask you a quick question, because I don't remember it, and I don't remember if it was Sweden or not. Clearly, if he'd used France as an example, I'd have said, okay,
yeah,
I would agree. Everybody can cite numerous historical things.
Because he was like, can you believe it? Sweden. I mean, Sweden.
Which country had the problem where they did the, drew the cartoon of Muhammad?
France. That was France.
Are you sure?
I think that.
I did not think that was France. That was
I
not
thought
France.
that was France.
They had the riots.
France, they had the
I thought it was actually Sweden where they had.
It might have been.
I'm not. I think that I think
mass
that,
shooting of what? I think
Yeah.
the last mass.
When they did the cartoon of Muhammad,
and then there's the mass shootings.
I think that the Trump campaign has. The Atlanta comment comes to mind specifically. Sean Spicer is, I think is one of the great imbeciles of our time.
and I agree.
The Sweden comment, I think, is the only thing that interests me about that is that Sweden is notorious for not publicizing things that are going on inside of the country.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder: do we have some intelligence report that got to Trump that said last night in Sweden this happened, and Sweden doing as they always do, saying,
okay, well, I will say this.
It was a Danish newspaper.
I will say this. I will say this. I have a cousin who lives in Sweden. That shit ain't happening. I talk to her all the time. That shit ain't happening. It's just, and there's only 1% black people in Sweden, and that more than likely is my cousin and her sons, to tell you the truth. This stuff ain't happening. It's just.
But hold on. If we're saying that, I mean,
this is what's happening with Trump, and I'm not even being funny. He watches a crap ton of like Fox and other kind of left-wing cable news stuff, and he reads a ton of Breitbart and all those types of publications, and then he goes and he tweets stuff that he heard or read there. But in verifying any of the facts, a ton of it is what he would call fake news. Because it's just, he's just saying, yep, I knew it was a problem. And so then he tweets it. But his sources are so bad and flawed that, he's regurgitating things to the public that aren't true. And I think that's the other thing that bothers me, that it's just unpresidential. It's not an intelligence briefing. It's freaking Breitbart that you can actually almost trace half of his tweets to the day before one of the Fox shows mentioned something. And then the next day when he wakes up, he tweets about it.
And when it's wrong, he says, "Well, I heard it on Fox News."
Listen,
come on. Did anyone watch Michael Moore did that movie?
Trumpland.
No, not Trumpland. It was the one that was earlier this year where he went to the different countries.
Oh, Where to Invade Next.
Well, yeah, Where to Invade Next. Yes. One of the things that so bothered me about that movie was the fact that you were getting this feel for countries that doesn't exist. They're building up this expectation that, what's student loans? We don't have those. And you're leaving out in these myriad of other problems that don't exist in America or less in America, and you're sensationalizing this view of a perfection in Sweden, in places like that I don't think exists. Now, I think the Trump administration, Trump, Spicer, they need to figure out what they're saying because they're embarrassing everyone that voted for them, and that's a problem for me. But I also am cognizant of the fact that there is this misrepresentation of what life is like in Sweden. And when you saying that it's 1% black, one of the things that I'm hearing there is why? What's going on there that makes Sweden, if it's this wonderful place that Michael Moore made it seem to be, wouldn't you think that minorities would flock there to say, hey, we can live a great life much better than we can in the States, in Sweden?
Now, black people don't like the cold.
I would also just.
I'm just gonna tell you, black people don't like the cold.
It's simple.
We're tropical people. We don't like the cold. we're from Africa and islands. We don't like the cold. We ain't going to Sweden. We ain't going to nowhere. We ain't going to. Yeah, I'm from Chicago. But black people in general.
What's the largest population of black people in any state in the U.S.?
Now, this is odd because you're absolutely right. I know where you're going. It is Minnesota. They have like a wild number of Ethiopians in Minnesota. I don't know why.
Okay, but Texas.
But it's freezing freaking cold.
Texas, Florida, Tennessee.
Yeah.
I don't think there is a great
but you're also talking about the South.
Yeah, that's
that's where the climate's warmer.
Yeah, but you're talking about the areas where the slave trade dumped people and they just never moved out.
I think you're making a historically inaccurate claim. If you want to go to where there's more Klan organizations than anywhere else, then go to Indiana. Second
very
is
true.
Pennsylvania. This is not a.
Well, that was a
and
fact.
I would remind people that the civil rights. It was the Topeka, Kansas versus the Brown Board of Education. That's about 50 miles out.
Kansas is not a tropical environment.
And I would agree. And I'm always blown away by the number of Middle Easterners who go to Toronto. There's an enormous Middle Eastern population.
So my point is to say that it's because of the climate is not. I think
no. That's a tongue-in-cheek joke, but the I really can't say a true reason why. I tease that it is factual that it's not more than 2%, but it is factual that it's a very small percentage of black people up there, but it's mostly like relocated Africans more than it is.
But I also think you have this thing where you're going to go where communities already are, right? I mean,
to a degree,
it sort of builds upon itself.
Kind of, but I think that you can also make communities that function well. Again, Toronto is just full of Middle Eastern people. Like, you're coming from
and West Indian
and all these other places and going to Toronto. Toronto blows, man.
My only point in that is that if Sweden was this wonderful place that was so far ahead of America, and so far, you would have not only minorities, you'd have mass migration from.
But I also think too that English is not the first language there. So going there, you really do have to learn Swedish.
But if you're Middle Eastern, then why is 13% of the population of France Middle Eastern? Because they speak French there. They don't speak anything else. And it is.
But a lot of countries who were colonized by France or by.
I get that, but these are Middle Easterners. These aren't Africans. These are Middle Easterners.
True.
What I would make the argument of, most Middle Easterners actually would be more prone to speak English because the British had most of the Middle East.
Right.
So they're more prone to speak English and French by 1.5 miles. And if he had left it not at Sweden, but just said the EU in general, or France, or something like that, where you have documented problems, I would agree. Saying Sweden was pretty stupid, but I don't think it diminishes the larger point of there are problems that are going on in the world. There are a lot of acts of violence and terror that are happening all across the world.
Very true.
And that is probably the larger point. Misstating a country is stupid, but the larger point of, hey, this is happening everywhere and to our allies.
And it embarrasses people like you and I, Chris, that would probably want to. We even see slivers of what he's like, what the larger point is, but you can't even. You have so much trouble even defending it because you're like, The Atlanta one to me was the most inexcusable.
I'm with you. It just makes it idiotic at some point, and it does make it tough to defend, even if you believe the larger aspect of what you think he's trying to say. And I'm by no means Republican. I'm somewhere in the middle, but oh my God, like he makes it hard to want to defend his point because you have to guess at what he's saying.
My favorite thing about being on the podcast so far in the last 2 weeks is that we can, all of us have stated certain party affiliations and voting records, but we all agree on certain things that you wouldn't maybe have expected us to agree on if you just label party politics. Sure. I think that's kind of the coolest thing about this.
It's the problem with the two-party system, because I think most Americans actually have a very common middle ground, and then you're forced to choose between one of two parties when it comes time to vote, and then it kind of sucks. Yeah. So you don't know, which is why I love gridlock.
The great Dennis Reynolds says, I can either be blasted in the ass by the Republicans, or I can be blasted in the ass by the Democrats.
All right, so lastly, no, you're good. You're good. Lastly, really quick, there was a couple things that I did. We forgot to mention on the last podcast. One was the person that was up for Department of Labor, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Labor Secretary, who was the CEO of Carl's Jr. Decided. Hell no, I don't want this job. And he stepped down. And then the other I thought was really funny because we only got to see him 1 week. Young Jason Miller stepped down as the White House Communications Director. And I remember seeing him that one Sunday morning doing the Sunday morning shows. And we were thinking, what happened to Kellyanne? Like she's normally the one doing it. And I was like, oh wow, this is just like hateful Kellyanne. Like she's like masterful at deflecting to some other shit, and then maybe throwing a lie in there with it. But he was just like he almost said, you know what, fuck you. Like he almost, and I was like, whoa, stop.
No, in place of he was doing. Interviews in place of Kellyanne.
Yeah. A lot of people went out with Kellyanne.
And he also backed out of that.
And a lot of shows have refused to book her ever since. She has been maybe slightly not as forthcoming with the facts and saying wrong things.
Well, as soon as she said alternative facts, they started.
And again, a lot of them said, you've lost your credibility, we're just not going to book you back on the show.
Right.
So,
but you made it sound like Labor Secretary dude was just like, no, I don't want the job. That was scandal that made him decide not to.
This is true.
And same with this guy.
This is where I feel bad for the Carl's Jr. dude.
Yeah. They were both. They were both.
His
didn't want
wife went
scandals.
on Oprah in disguise, in 1989. And what I do not like about, and maybe there's more fire here than smoke, but it's regardless of what it was. She went on a TV show. Mm-hmm. Everybody now believes it's true because his wife went on disguise on a TV show. Mm-hmm. He wasn't on the show. He didn't have a chance to defend himself and say anything in his defense in any way, shape, or form. It could have been any number of things. This is what I don't like about where we are now. It was just, hey, you need to resign because there's a hint of scandal here. Well, I don't know what the hell happened in that case. I don't know that he's an asshole. He might not be.
But I think
I love his Hardee's ads. They're great. I love them.
Yes, Chris, you would like the Hardee's ads.
They say, well, I'll put it like this. As if you were a single man, the Hardee's ads are amazing.
My larger point is he never got to defend himself.
I'm finna say, but they are a little sexist.
Let's be
assholes.
honest. He has an ad agency, and they do the ads. But he never got in any way, shape, or form a chance to defend himself in the public. And now you have this story out there from 89 says, however many years ago, that is almost indefensible. That he has no way of coming back and saying, "Here's my side of the story." That's not going to happen. Yeah. So it is.
Well, and that is the problem with.
Once you cast an assertion on somebody,
yes.
You have most people will believe it regardless, even if that wasn't
We were
true.
listening to a podcast last night about what is fake news, and not going into that topic. But one of the things that they kind of said was how people will double down on something that they believe in. So they were giving people, here's the inaccurate story. Here's the real story. And when they read the real story, they still chose to believe the inaccurate one, the fake one.
Real story.
Because it just aligned with what they wanted to believe.
There are
Real
lots of
stories
interesting
are a very
studies.
tough thing to say.
There are really interesting studies though about the decisions that we made.
They were factually accurate.
No.
My favorite study that kind of, and it does pertain to this in one way. My favorite study that was ever done was somebody did two blackjack decks, stacked one so that you always lost, and made the other one a live deck where you could win and lose. And the crazy thing of the study was every participant, almost to a T, was more entranced by the deck that they kept losing. So by the end of the study, there were like 2 people playing on the live deck and 25 people playing, and I'm making up numbers, but it was something. It was something horrible, some horrible discrepancy, and it's because people are almost attracted to
the worst. Yeah.
But it does go back to, if you believe or you feel what you're going to believe what aligns with your ideology.
Sure. So when I say
whether it's right or wrong.
Well, the right or the wrong is where you got to be able to figure it out, and that's hard. And when we say there's real news, real facts, so these people didn't believe the real story, they just believe the other story. What I'm telling you is that facts are selective. There's always an editor involved. There's always a way that you write a story.
I don't believe that.
Oh my God. I mean, like, I could say the same thing 3 different times, all of which were true, but give you I guess, a perspective on where I'm coming from. And again, I told you before, I told you the story.
So we were talking about investigative journalism as a thing of the past, almost. Now it's very much opinion news. People write their opinion. Yeah. They speak their opinion.
There was never such a thing as true, objective, investigative news. It always had a point of view because it was being edited. You're selected with the facts, and you write a story from your particular perspective.
I don't agree with that either.
There's no possible way to be objective in just telling a story. It is impossible. It always comes with a viewpoint of some sort, even if you try to fight against the viewpoint. And it also goes up through editors who select what they're going to leave in and leave out.
Yeah.
There's a million things. There's never, ever... And this notion of objective news didn't even start until 1900. And so it's a fairly relatively new phenomenon. Before that, it was just... Listen, we are a democratic paper. So,
but you said 1900. It's not like 1900 was like 5 years ago. I mean, we've evolved.
The KC Star has always been and was known to be and was proud of being a very Republican newspaper. What's his name? Nilsson, the guy who started it in the art museums named after him and all that kind of stuff. Hyper Republican. And it was directly in response to the Pendergast machine, and so they were clearly very democratic. Mm-hmm. So you had 2 different Kansas City papers at the time. One was Republican, one was Democrat. Nobody ever questioned the fact of which side of the news they were getting. It's no different than MSNBC and Fox right now. I mean, they're very clearly slanted, and so you watch a story and you go, I just got the real facts. Because those are the facts.
That's not what I do. That is not what I do.
Everybody's going to say no. But everybody comes to things with predispositions and things that seem to make more sense to them than otherwise. If you have to give the benefit of the doubt to somebody, you're going to go with your natural leanings. And so there's no such thing as objective.
That's actually true. Every time, a lot of people that post on social media now that have some of the sensationalized stories, I'm seeing it's coming from usuncut.com.
Right.
Every time I see a story breaking on usuncut.com, I immediately say, I'm not believing this until I see it replicated on 2 or 3 other more.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think to kind of put a pin in it, so that because we've come to that time we need to wrap up. Sure. I think we've hit a point. And I've always made the comparison that it feels like we are moving toward the movie Idiocracy with the speeding bullet. And the fact that who, what, when, and where isn't enough. Your why is always the color. But the facts are who, what, when, and where. And if we can at least, I think the problem comes in that we're not even getting the same who, what, when, and where. Because if we're getting who, what, when, and where from both sides, but we're getting two different whys, I think you can read both stories, figure out what the truth is, and move forward. But if you're getting a completely different who, what, when, and where, then it's very hard to tell which story is true. And thusly, fake news.
I don't even, I'll
Or
respectfully disagree, but I don't even think that who, what, when, and where is always that cut and dry. It's how you report the who, what, when,
That's
and
true.
where.
And that's why I say I think they say in journalism who, what, when, where, and why. But I think who, what, when, and where should basically look. There was a fire. It was on the corner of, but the why is where your color always comes in.
I'll give you the classic example. I've told you this example before, and you can say things that are factually accurate, but give a different perspective. So my dad for years always said, if a Russian and American were in a race and the American won, American papers would report that the American won the race, and the Russian reporters would report that the Russian guy the American came second to last. They're both factually accurate things to say. Yeah. There's nothing remotely untrue about either one of those statements. Right. It's the way that you report it.
Well, and
the what and
a more interesting, a historical example of that is I just had to look up the names. I'm not going to pretend like I remember the name off the top of my head, but the Mountain Meadows massacre, which was it was a massacre that was perpetrated by the Utah militia, which was essentially a Mormon massacre. And the way that the Mormons reported it was more self-defense. But the way that history looks at it, it was very much not self-defense. It was very much turn and shoot the person next to you. And so I remember seeing some of the recordings, some of the reports that came out then, and it was a very slanted history. And it does focus on who, what.
Sure, and you can say things that are factually accurate in different ways. Okay. And that's why I always have a hard time with reporting. There is no objective journalism in my mind. Okay. But it's an interesting
in media. We try to play into that hard. We go find personas and we completely advertise around that. Already finding out how people are thinking, play into that to make money.
Yeah. I do suppose even before I sign off, even with this show, this is a roundtable that discusses the events and news of the day, and so of course it is all colored by what we all think about what happened this week. But I think the reason that I set this up the way I set it up was so that there was always more than one opinion at the table. So hopefully at the end of all this, we can try to find some common ground, some common truth.
We're not friends anymore.
It's not going to be Dr. Ben Carson, unfortunately.
but either way, I'm going to end this podcast in the way I end all podcasts, and that is with the toast that started it all for me, and that is to good times with good people.